welcome everyone to the fourth episode of the Croatian Sensation podcast. And today I have my friend Evan Centopani on the show. Evan, welcome. We haven't spoke like this for over almost 4 years actually. It was December.
Yeah, I think last time was at the Arnold.
Yeah, the Arnold, but then I interviewed you in December of 2016. You were just getting ready for the 2017 New York Pro before everything went to shit.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's been a while, man.
Wait a minute. I hope this isn't bad luck. If something goes to shit again, I'm never interviewing with you again.
So we spoke earlier, and what did you tell me? That I have nothing bigger.
You told me you have a bigger beard than me, and I said, Lorenzo, nothing you have is bigger than me.
Guys, if you have friends in your life, they have to be like this. You know, they have to remind you every once in a while that you're still way out of their league. And I've seen Evan in person. He's one. If you kind of look tall on camera, but you look fucking stumpy in person.
Really? Yeah. I look shorter.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you have no chest, you have no traps, you have no lats. It's just all arms and legs and fucking calves and everything else in between. Like your khakis were literally this wide and this short. And your shirt.
What was?
Your pants, your trousers.
Oh, my khakis.
Yeah. So it was just hilarious to see you, because you were in contest shape, so you weren't in off season and you were still humongous. Like, what did you weigh at that show? That was the 2016 Arnold, I think.
Probably 2016 Arnold, probably about 260.
Fuck. Shredded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't very good showing for you. That was your last showing though, right?
That was my last showing. It wasn't my best.
Why is that?
I don't know. I wasn't my biggest. I wasn't my hardest. You know, I wasn't my fullest.
Why did you come into the show like that? Any specific reason?
I don't know. Because I'm a shitty bodybuilder. I don't know.
Oh, that's not the answer, but
I don't know, because I still don't know what the hell I'm doing after all this time. No, I don't know. I just, I wasn't holding as much muscle, probably because maybe the off season going into it, I just didn't put on the size that I needed to. And, a lot of people don't understand that. That's really one of the most important things when you're competing. You have to begin a prep as big and as strong as possible, and ideally not too fat. That's the best place to start. Big, strong, not too fat. If you can begin a prep that way, you're going to have a good prep. So I probably started that prep not too big, not too strong, and, maybe a little fat.
So you don't believe in that whole, growing into the show type thing? And
I don't know. Not really. No.
Let's put it this way.
I'm not gonna.
Let's put it this way. Do you think that you need to use tons of drugs as a professional bodybuilder to grow into a show? I'll put you on the spot.
I think it depends on the person's genetics. I think certain guys, I think if you're someone who's naturally really lean, I think you can grow into a show just going from being in such a calorie deficit to adding more food. I think you can grow into a show. I think if you're someone who, you're a naturally bigger guy, you're going to, if you start the prep really big and you just focus on getting as conditioned as you can, you're going to go into the show at your best the first time around. Once you start adding food, if you try growing into the show, within reason, I don't know if you're going to come in your best condition. In terms of drugs, it really, I think, depends on the person. you know. But it also depends too on what you're doing with your diet. If you start a prep, again, if you start really big, that's one more reason you shouldn't have to use as much drugs.
Yeah.
If you start a prep small, well, now you're trying to grow. You have to use more stuff. It's, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So basically, it's just if you don't have like I don't know 𝗬'𝗟𝗥𝗞 genetics, it's probably not the best idea.
If you've got really freaky genetics, you could probably do it pretty. You know, it's very feasible. For most people, it's probably not a very easy thing to do.
Do you follow Justin Luis Rodriguez? He's from your area, New York, Connecticut area.
I know who he is, but I don't necessarily follow him.
Yeah, because he posted like a comparison shot because he was competing at the New York Pro, and we were gonna get to that last weekend. And he looks like he put on 30 pounds and leaned out 20 pounds in a matter of 4 weeks. It literally looks like that. Like the picture, I'm gonna send it to you later. It looks insane, you know. And supposedly he was doing 2 hours of cardio and eating like 50 grams of carbs during that time frame. Like, how can you know what I mean? It's a little bit.
It doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
But of course, if you see someone like him and you see it being done, yeah. You know it's possible, but only with certain things.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get. So, speaking of the New York Pro, that's the show that you won in 2000. That's actually your pro debut. You were, how old were you? 26, 7?
27 or 28?
I think you were, yeah, around that. So 27 years old, you won your first pro show. 2 years after turning pro at the Nationals, and that's like the crowd. When there are still videos, if you guys want to watch, there are still videos online. Like the crowd, your crowd was going crazy, and it was still possibly your best showing to date. Like it's probably your in terms of condition and fullness, that's probably your best appearance thus far. So going into this year, like 11 years later, and there was the New York Pro in Tampa. Why did you decide not to do it? Because I know that you had plans competing at the New York Pro. So why did you decide not to do it? And, you know, just talk about it.
Yeah. You know, the reason I chose the New York Pro, you know, when I first started competing as an amateur in 2005, the first show I did was in New York. When I did my first pro show in 2009, it was in New York. So for me, New York has a large amount of sentimental value. It's very meaningful to me. And then being able to have, you know, friends, family, you know, now what would be my 2 daughters, you know, at the show with me was a big deal to me. And that was largely the reason I chose it. So when I learned that they had made the decision to move it to Tampa, which I think business-wise, I think it was a great decision because, you know, you want to be able to keep the show going and, you know, give guys who have been training for it the avenue to still compete in it. So I think it was great, but for me personally, I would rather wait and then do it the way that I wanted to do it in New York with friends and family there, you know, in a way that's more meaningful to me.
Do you think you would have, I don't know if you saw any pictures, but do you think that the mental aspect of being, you know, the home crowd and everything, do you think it would have helped your look? And do you think you would have looked just as good if you competed in Tampa at the New York Pro?
You mean compared to 2009 or just
No. I mean, like, say, you know, like in a parallel universe.
Because you have to travel.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think that the traveling would have necessarily affected my look or anything like that. Maybe being in New York would have been maybe a little bit advantageous with the crowd and things like that. But, you know, the judging is really the judging, I think. I don't think it would really have mattered in terms of my placing or how I would look.
Okay, that's interesting, because I thought that it would maybe, but you don't seem like the type of guy that gets mentally affected by things too much.
No, I mean, I get nervous really for any show, and anytime I've ever competed, I've always gotten nervous.
Really?
So I don't think, always, every time. So I don't think it would matter where it was. I'm going to be nervous no matter what.
Well, why is it anxiety? Do you get like, is it like, oh my God, you know, all these guys around me, they're so good. Like, what is it exactly that you're nervous
I think
about?
for me, you know, I'm not really like a showy person. So getting out on stage, really kind of in your underwear in front of a bunch of people, it's not really my natural, it doesn't really come natural to me, because I don't really consider myself like an entertainer or a performer. Maybe if I'm speaking, or I don't know, I've gotten better at it over the years, but there's just going to be a degree of nervousness and anxiety because, you know, you don't know how you're going to look or how you're going to do, or I think a lot of it is pressure. You know, you spend so much time preparing for a show, months and months of training and dieting and everything else, and it comes down to just, you know, 5 minutes or something on stage.
Yeah.
So how could you not be a little bit nervous?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but it's interesting, you know, coming from you, because you've been at it, like you've competed almost every year, like since 2005. So
Yeah, I definitely don't get as nervous as I did in the beginning. In the beginning, it was like I almost needed someone to push me out onto the stage, you know.
oh my God, that's hilarious. Well,
But
that's funny. And did you see any pictures from the New York Pro, anything, or
I saw a little bit. Yeah,
what did you think?
I thought the guys looked good. You know, I thought Ian looked good, and the kid Justin that you had mentioned, I thought he looked really good. I thought Max Charles actually looked really good.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
does
Max was
Milos.
big. And,
So
what's
does
that?
Milos.
Yeah, I know.
You saw
He's
that.
pissed. He's been talking about it.
Yeah, we were going back
Um,
and we were going back and forth in my DMs, because I posted like a comparison shot between, you know, the back double biceps from the 90s, where he was included, with the back double biceps from this show. And I said, you know, the conditioning is not that much worse. You know, if anything, it's maybe even a little bit better than it was back then. And he got really, like, you know
really?
what I mean? He got really pissed. Yeah, I mean, we talked it out, but still, you know. What do you think about that debate, like the 90s versus now, and the condition? Are the guys bigger? I mean, you were in that, you know, I think if you put yourself in the 90s, you were one of the guys that would compare to Mike Francois, for example. I think you have similar structure, weaknesses, strong points, but
Right.
Mike competed at like 250, and you were 260, 270 on stage in the same type of
Yeah, I
condition.
mean, Mike was big, hard, thick, really powerful physique, you know, and in condition. I always thought Mike had one of the coolest physiques in that it just, I would say, man, I would like to look like that guy. He looks powerful, you know. In terms of, I guess, to compare a whole generation, I don't know if just the conditioning was better, or if maybe you were just working with better bodybuilders. You know, there were so many good, extremely talented bodybuilders in the 90s. So, you know, when you have someone like Flex Wheeler or Sean Ray or Nasser or Kevin Levrone, Dorian, Milos, of course they came in condition, but I think a lot of it, they just had better physiques. So they just looked better. I don't know if it's because necessarily that they were bigger or that they were more conditioned, but everything in totality, I think they just looked better. And I don't know, maybe we could even, I'm sure, get into other things. Could say, did the drugs screw things up? Did GH fuck up the physiques? Did insulin mess everything up? And I really don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Was just something as simple as stage lighting a little bit better back then? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the stage lighting in California. The lighting was horrific.
Have you seen anything worse? Like, I remember, like, 2012 Chicago Pro was worse.
That was bad.
Like, I know a couple shows that were bad, but this bad, I don't remember. Do you remember anything like that?
No. You mentioned Chicago, and then this one were two pretty bad ones. So I don't know. I mean, do I think the 90s had more better body? Like, did as a generation, as a class, were they better? Yeah. Is it because they were more conditioned? Maybe not. Maybe they just looked better for other reasons.
No, I agree.
I don't know.
I agree. That's what I told him. Like, because he told his argument was like, why are people saying bring back the 90s? Because the physiques and the stage presence and the posing and the personalities were a lot better. Like, Flex Wheeler's physique compares to no one today. Like, Sean Roden is a little bit comparable, but he's not in that same type of, it's not that, Like, then you have maybe Ian versus someone like Dorian, and it's not there, Like, the dimensions are, like, Sean Roden is 250 peeled at 5'10", and Flex Wheeler was 225, 230, not so peeled at 5'10". So obviously the guys are bigger, and that was my argument. Guys are today bigger and harder, but I think the genetic capabilities of those guys at the time were much better, and they presented, and the media pumped up those physiques a lot more. Like Peter McGuff, you don't have a writer like Peter McGuff anymore. You have fucking me.
You got me. That's all you get. Yeah, I think the sport as a whole. I mean, listen, social media is great for a lot of reasons. It connects a lot of people that maybe wouldn't otherwise be connected, and there's more access, more accessibility. But in the end, I don't think it results in a better overall product. In the 90s, when you either had to go to a show or you had to pick up a magazine, or maybe, there's some things were on pay-per-view, it was just better.
Yeah.
It ended up, you had more of a polished product.
It was more romantic. It was more romantic, You didn't hear about Flex Wheeler ended up in a hospital because of diuretics. You didn't hear about Nasser freezing up in his hotel room at the Grand Prix. You just saw the amazing physiques and, the battles in the magazines. You didn't,
I think that, even with the magazines, people would complain about the magazines, Flex Magazine, Muscular Development. And they would say, well, who wants to buy a magazine or pay for a subscription or whatever it is? But at the end of the day, a magazine subscription wasn't very expensive, but you ended up with professional photographs, taken by someone like Per Bernal, and you had professionally written articles, and, you had a physical product, which over time, you end up with a collection of magazines if you want to refer back to them. So, I mean, I just think it was a better thing. Now, what do we have? We have people filming themselves in half-ass videos on YouTube and, Instagram. I don't know. It's sometimes I think we have a lot more volume now, but not nearly as much quality.
I agree. Like, imagine if, let's take your example. Do you think that, like back then, like in between '05 and '07, you were hyped up in in MD, you were all over the boards, videos with 𝗬'𝗟𝗥𝗞, everybody was talking about your freaking arms and your triceps. Do you think that would happen today? Like, you would get featured by, I don't know, bodybuilders without bars, and nobody would give a fuck about you 5 days later.
Yeah, it just bodybuilding has become less of an event. There's less allure, less glamour. People are making less money. There's this perception that people are making more money because some jerk off on Instagram, takes a picture with an exotic car that he doesn't own. So you think he's making money, but people were making more money. There were contracts. It was just a better industry. It was just social media has done some good things, but if I'm going to look at the bottom line, I think social media fucked everything up.
Do you think it's social media to blame, or is it the people in charge of the magazines and the people? Do you think that maybe people in charge are to blame, like not social media in itself?
Well, I mean, I think. Well, you look at all magazines. All magazines are dying, and it doesn't matter how good of a magazine it is. It doesn't matter if it's GQ or Rolling Stone or National Geographic. They're all biting the dust. So I don't think we could blame all those editors and say, well, they weren't doing a good job. In hindsight, could the editors and the people running the magazines, could they have been more proactive and done a little bit more of a better job, things like that? Sure. Do I think it would have stopped the magazines from dying? No. When you have all the newspapers are dying, that's not because the editors are to blame. Could they be putting out a better product? Yeah, you could always be putting out a better product, but I think it's just the public perception and attitude toward people don't want to pay for things. They want stuff just on their phone immediately. It's just a different time that we're living in.
You were born in a different you were born in the wrong generation, I think.
Well, yeah, no, for certain, but I was born like kind of on like in like a funny time because like I saw the birth of the internet and computers and social media, like, and I need to use it. The generation before me or whatever it is, they could probably get by more without it. Like, they're already kind of past it. And then the generation below us, well, they were born with it and it's part of their DNA. So I think our generation is kind of more like a funny in-between phase.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. You made all good points. So basically, to sum it up, you're trying to say that the coverage of bodybuilding is like so much worse that the bodybuilders of today maybe don't get as much exposure as those guys did before. So in turn, it makes everything else go to shit.
I think there's just less allure. It's not as alluring. It's not as exciting. And it's not because the bodybuilders are bad, or I don't think it's for any one reason. I think it's just a combination. A lot of it, I think, too, is it's a generation thing. It's a matter of fashion, so to speak. I mean, muscle itself isn't fashionable. I mean, bodybuilding itself, fitness is something that's popular and it's attractive. I mean, in the 90s, you could turn on ESPN and, Corey Everson was on and Lee Haney was on, and they had workout programs in the morning, and muscle in general was just more sought after, more desirable, more accepted. I think a lot of it has a lot to do with a societal shift, and a lot of it is based on changing views toward masculinity, where in the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, masculinity was viewed a certain way, and then now it's demonized. I mean, I watched Rambo the other night, right? And I walked away from it thinking, now there's a movie that Hollywood would never make today. Here you've got John Rambo. He's a veteran. He's upset because he loves his country and he doesn't think that veterans are getting the respect they deserve. He's fighting communism. Like, it's all good. Hollywood would never make that movie today. Just a lot has changed.
Do you think that how do I put this? So you think that men have gone a little bit too soft as well, along with the whole generation?
I don't want to be the one to say it, because I don't want to sound like I'm picking on anybody. But yeah, a little bit. I mean, you've got. I see kids on TV and on social media now, and they're holding signs. They want communism. They want to be handed things. They don't want the freedom or the autonomy to go out and have success lay on their shoulders. They have no shame in saying, well, yeah, I want to just take it from someone who has more than me. And I think that's really weak. I think that's un-American. I think it's not very masculine. And I think it's just, for lack of a better word, I think it's fucking lame.
As an American, where do you think that you guys have gone wrong? Because I'm watching America, and people always ask me, like, why do you care about American politics, since we got into a little bit political here? And I'm like, I do care, because in my opinion, you guys are the center of the world. You are like the Western culture is produced from America. So that's where everything begins. And then 10 years later, it trickles down to us. We're just 10 years behind you. So I'm scared that it's going to get like that here, Like, we still have a man's bathroom and a woman's bathroom, where in some places in the States, that's not, that doesn't exist anymore. So talk a little bit about where you stand on that.
Where did it go wrong? I think a lot of it, when you look at any cultural phenomenon or any large movement, a lot of times you just need to follow the money, right? So if I'm gonna look at things that way, which I think that's one of the ways in which you could look at it. If you look back to the United States in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, even into the 70s, the vast majority of our goods, our products, were produced in the United States. They were made in the USA. And they were done so because the United States, that is what made us a world power, largely, is our manufacturing capability. It's what built Great Britain. It's what builds most nations. If there's a large manufacturing.
It's what won the war.
I'm sorry?
It's your capability to produce and have the goods is what won the war for you, the Second World War.
Yeah, and in partnership with other industrialized nations like Great Britain and Russia, and it didn't take long for people to understand, well, large corporations, right, to realize that they could be producing goods rather than pay an American $5, $6, $7 an hour, they could pay someone in China pennies on the dollar to produce goods, right? So there was so much more profit to be made in third world countries, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Honduras, whether it's Malaysia, China, and any underdeveloped nation, right? So, you know, in the 1970s, with the advent of all these free trade agreements between the US and other nations, and slowly a lot of jobs start to leave the country, right? And manufacturing starts to go elsewhere. I think that the hardcore pro-American sentiment of made in the USA, patriotism, pro-America, I believe that it was a conscious effort by, let's just say, the powers that be. And when I say the powers that be, you have to remember the fact that the media in the United States, all the media outlets are corporate owned, right? And they're part of conglomerates. So you have the media putting out information, putting out sentiments, putting out essentially propaganda that coincides with their business interests. So it would make sense for them to start chopping down that patriotic, pro-America sentiment and saying, no, that's not cool anymore. Now we are globalists, right? That's the right thing to do. That's the best thing to do. Which doesn't quite make sense, because you have people in the United States, you know, they like to go to their local farmer's market and put stickers on their car that says, you know, buy local and support your local farm or some bullshit. But then, you know, they spend $50,000 on a foreign car and they support globalism, and they tell you that they champion human rights. Meanwhile, whether it's Nike or Apple or, you know, whoever else is manufacturing in China, there's no way in hell you're going to tell me that there aren't human rights violations, workers violations, poor working conditions. You know, is there a guy standing there and he works 8 hours a day? Maybe he gets one bathroom break. Maybe he pisses in a gallon jug while he stands there. I don't know. But there's no way that the working standards are what they are in the United States, or the environmental regulations. So you have all these people who want to walk around, they want to talk about save the environment, you know, reduce CO2 emissions, buy from your local farms, support local businesses, and all this happy shit. But then they want to go and support globalism. So for me, no, it makes no sense. But it would make sense, though, that all the corporations, people who are doing business overseas, many of which are tied in with the media, would start to tell the American people that they would push for this sentiment. Okay, there would be a shift, this getting away from traditional, ideas of masculinity, and, we manufacture, we make our goods, we're proud to buy things made in the USA. I think it's all tied together.
Interesting. Wow, that's so crazy. I didn't expect that, but that's an awesome answer. So now I have to ask, did you ever think about, going into politics, like to change those things, maybe on a local level, then maybe on a state level, then maybe on a national level one day, and preach those things? Because let me put it this way. You are one of the very rare individuals from the United States that still supports and respects other, while being super American, super proud of your own country, and always voting and stuff like that. That you still, you still enjoy other cultures and other countries, and you like to visit, and you're not racist at all. You're like the least racist person you can probably meet. I mean, you always treated me nicely, even though you didn't have to, and you were always excited about the fact that I'm Croatian. We were always talking about the food and stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you combine those things? Like, where does that come from?
You know, I love my country, but you're from Croatia. I hope you love your country. You're supposed to love your country.
I do.
And if I come in and visit your country, I want to show appreciation for your country. And if you come to my country, I want you to love my country too, because I'm proud of it. It's my pride in my country that hopes that you like it and hopes that you have a good stay and hopes that you have a good experience, because I want you to leave my country with a good feeling and a good memory of it, because I'm proud of it. That's my love for it that makes me feel that way. So yeah, I want to make things in the United States, and I want Americans to support other Americans, and I want people in Croatia to make things and have those businesses be supported by other Croatians. Look, every culture should first and foremost support themselves and each other, right? It's like a family. You know, I live in a house, right? I take care of my family first. I make sure they're fed, I make sure everybody's safe, and I lock the door at night when I go to sleep, because that's part of my job, to make sure everybody is safe and secure. Once everything is okay in my home, well, now I can start looking out into my community and making sure everything is good in my community, and that my community is supporting, everyone in my community is supporting one another. And then we go to a state level, and then the country level. Once everything is good in our country, now we can concern ourselves with the rest of the world. It's so many of these things. These are just fundamental common sense things that we all understand. You understand it, I understand it, but you have the world meddling in each other's affairs and touting these notions, you know, whether it's globalism or whatever it is. And it's not because the people advocating these things, not because they really believe them, or because they really think it's the right thing to do. They do it for their own interest, and they're just trying to find a reason to convince you to believe it too.
Or because they're told it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, you have a lot of people, they hear one thing, and so they hear it and then they repeat it, and they don't even think to themselves whether it makes sense or not. But look, you don't have to be a genius to know. I mean, look at the recent pandemic with the COVID virus, right?
Oh, you love the pandemic. You're a big fan.
Well, you know, it brings to light a lot of things. So all of a sudden there's shortages of all these things, right? Oh, wow. China makes 80% of our pharmaceuticals, or something absurd. Now, anybody with half a brain knows along the way that that's not a good idea. It wouldn't matter if China's our best friend, which they're not our best friend. They're not an ally of ours. But even if they were our best,
dude, they're nobody's best friend.
But even if they were our best friend, even if they were our strongest ally, to put all that in their hands, it makes no sense. We're supposed to be a nation of individuals that can stand on their own 2 feet, so that as a country we could stand on our own 2 feet. But it's not the way it's working anymore, and I don't believe it's the right way. And people are going to go, "Oh, Evan, you know, you're a dinosaur. You're thinking the old way." Look, I don't need to hear some bullshit. I don't need to hear some bullshit because somebody who goes to a fucking Ivy League school or some crap, you know, their professor or their, you know, told them this or they told them that. I know what I see with my own 2 eyes. I know I don't need to recreate the world to be able to look back into history and know what has already worked. All right. There doesn't need to be all this innovation and all this recreation. If people would just focus more on continuing what already works, they wouldn't be wasting all this time trying to recreate the wheel. It's I don't know. I don't agree. I mean, I just don't agree.
So, did you always think like this, or was it something that you developed into? Because obviously the guys from MD never asked you a thing like this. They always asked you how much protein do you eat and how many sets do you do. But were you always, because you didn't talk about this like that much years ago?
Well, growing up, right? My father was involved in manufacturing, right? He was a blue collar worker, still is. The city that is right next to my town was a large manufacturing city. It's now empty, right? I mean, whether it was the production of ammunition and firearms, guns, sewing machines, General Electric produced appliances there. There was all sorts of companies producing goods right next door to me in the city right next door. Now when you drive through and you see all the empty buildings, right? And you say, geez, imagine if all these buildings were filled with workers. There'd be more work than there would be workers. There wouldn't be enough workers to do all the work. That's beautiful. That's great. And I don't agree. I don't agree with the idea, as I understand it, the way that it was pitched to people, the way that they sold people on this idea of globalism, it was like, well, you're going to be able to, you're going to be able to buy, it's going to be great because rather than spend, X amount for a TV, now it's going to be so much cheaper. Isn't that wonderful?
It's not only that, but the other pitch was, you can focus on education and getting a better job so you don't have to slave away in a factory for the rest of your life. Other people can do that.
But the reality is, Lorenzo, now you have in the United States all these kids who went to college and they spent $100,000 on a degree, and guess what? There's nothing there for them.
And that's where we're gonna end this segment, because it's a bodybuilding podcast still, and I know that you want to talk about this stuff, and I want to hear you talk. I could hear you talk about this shit for 5 hours, because you explain things very well, and you put everything in perspective, and you make sense of things, whereas I don't think the world makes much sense at all right now. So speaking of perspective and seeing things differently, blah blah blah, I saw you posing in a video lately, and you look fucking incredible. Is it as good as we think it is, or is everything burning in the background, or is it a good package in your mind, the way you look right now?
It's okay. It could be better, It's good, but things still need improvement.
Where?
Everywhere. Legs could be better for sure, but the leg training is going really well.
How well? Like, explain.
Like every time I train legs, I have a pump that is so crazy that for a long time I just didn't have. So, I mean, when I'm training my legs, the way that they round out and the size is improving, it's something good is happening.
But how do they compare one to another? Are they both slim, or is it one bigger than the other?
They're pretty even side to side, but I would say that they could both still use more size.
Yeah, because you didn't show us the legs. You actually did the side leg, which was always crazy on you. So, I mean, it did look lean. It did look bodybuilder-ish, if we're gonna say it that way. But I don't know how it compares to years prior.
It could use more.
Yeah. But the upper body, do you think the upper body is there, or does the
Upper body, I think, is right there.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Even the back almost improved a little bit. Don't you think?
I think a little bit. Yeah, I think my back, the way I'm training it now, I'm just getting more stimulation from my
How?
training, I think.
How?
Just not, you know, just focusing entirely on weight. You know, changing of some of my exercises. Um,
Do you think that, by the way, do you think that you got a little bit stuck in your ways for a while, between maybe 2013 and 17? Do you think that maybe you should have switched things up a little bit? Maybe team up with someone like Meadows, to maybe give you a few good fresh ideas, because you were basically doing like a bro split for ages, and the same, like your training video from '07 was the same as the one from 2016. So do you think that maybe you would have been a little bit better if you changed that?
yeah, I think, sometimes you get a little bit caught up on certain exercises and making sure that you're always hitting certain numbers on those exercises. And in doing that, maybe sometimes you end up sacrificing some mind muscle connection, or, doing something that maybe doesn't offer the most stimulation or the right, maybe muscle recruitment. Whereas earlier on in my, bodybuilding, I wasn't afraid to, try more different exercises or switch things up a little bit more. And then around 2009, 10, you know, I became really concerned with always beating the numbers or making sure I'm moving certain weight on certain exercises. And it's good in a way, but I don't know if it was the best thing. I mean, for example, like when I train legs right now, the feeling that I'm getting in my legs is better than the feeling I've had in my legs in years, like long time. Like the pump is in all the right spots. It feels right.
So in short, like in a few minutes, how do you structure your leg training now? Like how does it look? Like what do you start with? What do you do? Amount of sets, reps, what does it look like?
So I'll go in and I'll start with like just some extensions, like high rep, like 50, 55, 60 reps, but like it's like a competition, like it's gonna burn bad, right? And this is gonna sound really stupid, but I'll do some body weight squats. Okay.
Doesn't sound stupid
Just
to me.
body weight with such slow negatives. And then even on the concentric portion of the movement, so slow. And the the neurological recruitment is so strong that then when I go on to do other movements, whether I'm squatting or I'm doing hack squats or split squats, I feel it in all the right places.
Great. Awesome. I mean, good to hear, because you need that. So you basically do you still care about, the weight you're using? Like, do you try to progress, or?
Yeah, I mean, weight, of course, is still always important. So I'm trying to continuously move in that direction of a little bit more weight. But I don't let it dictate. So if I start, say I'm training legs and I have a leg workout and the next day, the only thing that hurts are my glutes and my knees, then I know I didn't do something right. I was focusing too much on just moving weight and not, just focusing on the muscle itself.
So did you try to apply that to the upper body now, like the chest and the arms? Because I think your pecs look a little bit fuller, and you do have like a pec split, which you didn't have before.
Right.
So did you apply that as well to the upper body, or?
With pretty much everything, yeah.
and
Yep.
it paid off, huh?
I think so. I mean, look, when you look at someone like Ronnie, okay, Ronnie was from another planet. He's not even a human. And in the long run, even Ronnie couldn't hold up. He couldn't sustain the training. So, you know, when I see some guys, the way they're training, the weight and everything, look, it's awesome. It is awesome, and it's great for development and for thickness and for density. But I don't think you can do it week in and week out for years on end and hold up. So you have to, even if you're going to train like that half the time, the other half of the time you have to do something different just to keep yourself alive.
And speaking of longevity, you are one of the few guys that were health conscious when that didn't exist, when it didn't have all these health supplement companies dishing out products for blood pressure. Nobody cared about blood pressure when you did. So did anyone care in 2010, 2012 about gut health?
And when I would talk about it, people would be like, "But you're taking steroids. Why do you care about your health?" And I'm like, "Well, I care because I'm using things, so I'm trying to like not fucking burst into flames."
Yeah. So yeah, you remember on the MD forums, like the guys would always make fun of you, like, "That's fucking stupid, dude. Why do you care about eating spinach when you're pinning Tesla," and stuff like that.
Right.
Those were the times, man.
It's like, yo, just because I'm driving, you know, if you're a race car driver, it doesn't mean you have to like take your seatbelt off and take your helmet off and, you know, light up a cigarette because you're driving your car 200 miles an hour. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you could be a race car driver and still wear a fireproof suit and wear your seatbelt, and that's not stupid.
Did you always do blood work?
Yeah.
Yeah, every year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, it doesn't tell you everything, but it's a smart thing to do, yeah.
Was it ever bad? Was it ever like worrisome?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
Well, what ends up happening? No, it was never really horrible. Like in terms of like, you know, liver enzymes being real high or anything like that. The only thing that would ever really, you know, my total cholesterol was never high. The only thing that would sometimes happen is your HDL would get really, really low. Especially, you know, when you're taking like an anti-estrogen or something like that.
That's what I was about to say, yeah. Yeah.
That's mainly it.
Yeah, but you always try to, like, over the years, you always try to mitigate. And do you feel like, you know, relieved that you did that at the time?
Yeah, I mean, because aside from aches and pains that I have, you know, just, you know, when, you know, you get up every day and you get out of bed and you're like, my back, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with my liver or my heart or anything like that. And, you know, just within the last year, a friend of mine, his girlfriend has access to ultrasound equipment. So she can do scans of arteries, heart, liver, kidneys, all that stuff. And she just checked me out within the last year, and everything was good. You know, when I did it a few years ago, the guy who came in and he checked out my heart and everything, he said it wasn't even enlarged or anything like that. So I'm pretty confident that internally I'm okay. Which isn't to say, look, walking around your whole life heavy, which as a bodybuilder, you're heavy. There's no way it doesn't put a strain on the heart, or a strain on your body as a whole. So I probably would be foolish to think that, you know, right now, if I'm 260 pounds, if I was 200, if I was 180 pounds or 190 pounds, that I would probably be much better off for my health.
But you're still fine.
But for someone who's a bodybuilder, I think I'm doing about the best you could do.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that more people should have listened to your advice at the time?
I think
Because
you just have to try to find a little bit of balance in an endeavor that isn't balanced at all. So, even if you're going to push really hard for a period of time, do things that you know are unhealthy, then you have to also go through a period of time where you're not doing that and you're doing what you can to try to restore some balance and try to revive and rejuvenate. And, you know, ideally you can do that at the same time, but you can't burn the candle at both ends, and you can't do it all the time.
do you think the
So,
body, do you think the body also, if you have bad blood work, are you gonna have, you know, worse look to your body? You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna improve at the rate that you might if your body is
no,
functioning.
look, if you look at a lot of bodybuilders, they look really good early on in their career. Flex Wheeler looked better in the beginning of his career. Everybody from Flex Wheeler to King Kamali looked better in the beginning. Craig Titus, a lot of guys in the end would go, Craig Titus, he wasn't that great of a bodybuilder. You see Craig Titus early on in his career, he's fucking fantastic, incredible physique.
Yeah.
A lot of bodybuilders, I think, as they go on, the body takes a beating, both internally and externally. And it starts to show. So yeah, look, the healthier you are, the better your body is going to respond. It's going to burn fat better. It's going to feel better. You're going to be able to train harder. A body that's sick or diseased, it's not going to be like, yeah, let me add 10 pounds of tissue. I can't even take care of the tissue I have. Well, let me add some new tissue. No, of course not. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, health in a sport that you want to think of as being unhealthy is still very necessary.
Yeah. Well, I hope people that listen are gonna apply it to themselves, because we're seeing more and more problems arise, and it's not looking good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, anyone could drop dead at any time. Okay, it happens to young people. It happens to people who aren't bodybuilders. It could happen to anyone. But if you're going to be someone who does things that you know are unhealthy, then try to do some extra things that you know are healthy.
Very good. You're a coach as well, and you're a good coach at that. So did you ever, as a coach, like had to fix someone up before continuing, or did you ever say like, whoa, dude, you should pull back a little, maybe we should, restructure things? And did that ever happen?
Not really. Most of the people who come to me, I feel like they seek me out because they know my approach or they know the way I think about things. So they want to be conservative. They don't want to do anything too crazy. So no, I've never had anyone who's like, I've had to argue with, they wanted to take more and I was like, no, or, I've been pretty lucky with the people that I work with.
You wouldn't believe it, but it happened to me multiple times. It's crazy out there, like at the smaller level. I've seen liver enzymes that are 10 times of what they should be, and things like that. So it's not even just the pro ranks. At least these guys are making money.
No, I think, well, yes, number one, right? If you're making a career out of it, it's no reason to ruin your health. But at least if there's money coming in, you say, well, I put my body through a little extra because I'm getting a return on it. I'm not saying it's right or it's a good enough reason, but I'm saying you can understand the justification. For the amateurs, it's some of the things I hear, it's crazy. And I think, contrary to what a lot of people believe, people will look at a pro bodybuilder and they'll say, well, he looks like that compared to an amateur bodybuilder because he just takes more stuff. When in reality, the professional is the professional largely because he has a certain genetic capacity and a certain genetic response. That's why he's the professional. I'm not saying he doesn't take stuff or whatever, but the guys that are pros become pros because they have it kind of in their DNA too. So I think, if anything, they might not have to do some of the crazy things that some of the amateurs are doing.
I talked to you about that stuff multiple times, and you disclosed some of the details, what you had to do, and you were like, oh, yeah, it was really high. And then I asked you, what was it exactly? And you would tell me like a regular dose for a guy that just, trains to be big on the beach. And you're like, I don't know, you were 300 pounds in off season and stuff like that. So, it's pretty fucking ridiculous, and it's not just you. I talk to other pro bodybuilders and coaches of pro bodybuilders, and it's not, some are pushing, some, and we know them, but, for the most part, I think it's not as bad as people think.
I think most of the time you see crazier stuff with the amateurs.
Oh, yeah. Or maybe you see the same, but it shouldn't be the same. Like if you're 200 pounds on stage using the same as someone that's 250, 260 on stage, maybe you should reevaluate things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I said this, years back on the forums. Guys would talk about basically what was appropriate for a beginner. And when I would hear some of the things that a beginner was using and the dosages, I just think to myself, that's insane. If as a beginner you need to do that to get a result, you should really reconsider if this is for you. Because as a beginner, someone who's never touched anything before, right? You never took anything, you should be able to take a very small amount and get a pretty good response, like get pretty big and pretty strong. If you don't, and I'm not saying anything bad or saying I'm better than someone like that or anything like that, but what I'm saying is it's a little bit of a forecast. So say, well, I didn't get much out of this. Only thing in your future is more.
Yeah.
So
they're not going to restructure their training or diet, that's for sure, because they don't know even how. So, but I'm going to quantify it for people, what Evan probably talks about, it's like 250 to 300 tests, maybe, if that.
Yeah.
For
I think a normal first cycle, at least where I come from, is like 400 to 500 milligrams of testosterone a week for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, the end. That's it.
Yeah. And remember the dosages that we would see on the forums, like first cycle, 750 test, 500 EQ, 300 DECA, 40 mg of D-ball a day. And then you have the sides, so you have to battle that, and it's ridiculous. And where are those people now?
And that's a good example, though, of where the internet, see, like when I was first starting off, there was no internet. Like a guy in a gym would give me some info, and I would use a little bit of something and get a result. Like I wasn't reading online, okay, guys are using, the cycle you just named. Maybe if I was reading that, that's what I would think was normal. So I think, the internet and social media, I think it's screwed a lot of people up.
But then again, I'm also gonna argue your point. Whereas I came up in the social media world, and I would see people that were damaged by doing those things. I would see the guys that were burned out by 25, stuff like that, and I knew it wasn't the training or the diet. So I assumed that it was something else. So I knew instantly, you know, like I was talking to one guy and he literally told me like that cycle that I mentioned before, it was literally something like that for the first one. And I was like 180 pounds, 190 pounds. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's not sane. And I said that I would like to take as less as possible. That was 4 years ago. And he was like, you don't know what you want to take. And I'm like, I do know. And I still know 4 years later, you know? So it's like, I think it's all a bit up here and how you evaluate things that you see online.
Right. True. No, of course.
Yeah. So final question before we go. Are you going to get big? Because at the beginning, you were talking about getting big in the off season. Are you planning on getting really fucking big again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a little bit of a break right now, to just clean up and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think I could have a really productive, 4 or so months off season, and then carry that into, my prep for New York again. And
so that's your plan for 2021 as well, going into New York next year.
Yeah.
What do you expect from that?
I want to win that show.
Now we're talking. Yeah, when you say that, it's not bullshit.
No.
Yeah, no. You think you're capable now?
Oh yeah.
That's different than with Centopani that I'm used to in the last few years, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's a good mindset to have, dude.
I'd be lying if I said the injury didn't screw me up a little bit, and not only physically but mentally,
Yeah, but now you're seeing things moving forward and you're confident.
Yeah.
Do you plan on hiring anyone as a coach? Do you plan on working yourself? Do you plan on training more in at the Montanari Powerhouse? What's the plan going forward?
Nothing. I mean, I pretty much know what I need to do for training. It would be beneficial. It's hard, there's really only a few people that I jive well with when it comes to training, but they're not always around. But if I could train with them regularly, it would be a positive.
So what you're saying is that I should bring you over to Croatia and we're gonna kill it. We're gonna kill it.
And help me do forced reps and feed me squid.
Squid are low protein, bro. They have like 16, 17 grams of protein per 100. Like, to feed you, I'm gonna go broke.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So it was awesome talking to you as always. Thank you for coming on. And do you want to shout anyone out before?
No, I mean, I guess if anything, just to anyone watching this, thanks for watching and thanks for staying interested. And I don't know, I've always been lucky in that I've always had a lot of support online, back when it was the forums, now it's social media. And I've just always been lucky like that. So, thanks, guys.
People fucking love you, man. It's incredible. I still get DMs about you and stuff, everybody asking like, what's Evan doing? What's he about? It's fun. Even the newer generation, like the younger guys, didn't see you compete at all. And they go back and watch your stuff. So you have a big influence in the sport. You should be more exposed in it, I think.
Expose myself.
Yeah, no, you should be more, online, more active. Are you planning on starting a YouTube again or something?
I'd like to. I'm always so, you know what it is? I'm always so busy being in the moment. Like the other day I was changing the brakes on my truck, right? And I meant to get a picture of myself doing it because I said, well, maybe people would find this interesting. But I never did it because when I'm doing something, I'm always so focused on it. And then I'm not thinking about taking pictures of it or showing it. And I need to be better at that. I'm bad. I'm bad at that.
You should take a book out of, you should take a page out of Luke Sanders' book. You know, he brought a videographer with him everywhere. Yeah.
I need a
So,
videographer.
yeah. So again, thank you for coming on, and we're gonna, hopefully this is gonna spread like wildfire, and that's about it. See you
Thanks for
guys.
having me, Lorenzo. It was good talking to you.
No problem. See you guys around.